Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's good to be in the presence of like-minded people looking to make a difference in the world. I'm grateful to Devex for having me join you today. I wanted to talk about something deeply personal. We all try very hard to stand up for what is right. The challenge sometimes is our own fears and vulnerabilities get in the way. And what I wanted to talk to you about today, especially as we work in development, especially as we work to build equity in our own organizations, and as we think about equity from who we are and who we want to be, let's talk about the vulnerabilities that stop us. Let's talk about psychological safety and how we fight for equity. I want to start by telling you a story. And as I share this story, I ask you to think about your own story. To think about when was the first time you realized not everybody is exactly the same. For me, I must have been about 7 or 8, and it was in Calcutta, where I grew up. And I had come out to play, and my little brother had run out ahead of me. And the drivers, per se, in this apartment building where we lived, were mocking him. He was maybe 3, 4, I can't remember. And they were saying, "What is that laddu," which is a sweetmeat Indian dessert, "on your head?" We're Sikhs. And he had a bun, a top knot, on his head, which he wore just as somebody wears short hair. And I was indignant. I'm like, these are adults and they don't understand what hair is? Why would they say that? And I knew I was right. I knew it was hair. I knew the adults, those in power, were wrong. And that gave me the start of trying to understand that even when I was uncomfortable, when authority was calling my brother out, and I was a child, I knew that I still had the perspective to choose to be right. Interestingly enough, my son, first, I would say definitely not the first time he understood he was different, maybe the 100th time, was when he was 6. And this stands out to me because we were going on our first vacation as the single mother, and my 2 kids, you know how you hold both of them and try to move luggage at the same time, and you're at the TSA line. And I had him go forward, and my daughter was behind me, and he got pulled aside for this random search. And I know fear then. I know that there's authority that I cannot fight completely. And I had my daughter behind me, and they wouldn't let me get to him. And they were patting him down, and they wanted to touch his hair, which to us is sacred. The hair that a Sikh person has, including my long hair, is a uniform. It's the concept, it's the uniform, it's the appearance we use to say we're going to fight for equity. We're going to stand for what is right. So as a child, somewhere in that point where my brother was called out, I made up a story that helped me. 2 groups fighting. There's an aggressor, and there's a weaker party. And I'm a Sikh person that is known, with the turban and the beard and the long hair, to stand for justice, to stand for what's right. The weaker party will call to me. And the stronger party, if I go there, will know that I'd have to be taken down. So in every moment, I think from that childlike perspective of how do I choose? How do I push myself to stand up for what I believe in, even if I'm putting myself in harm's way? So experiencing microaggression, discrimination, and its related programming is something we all carry. As I started, I asked you to think about when you felt you were a little different. It doesn't mean that it has to only be race or religion or gender. It could be size, it could be disability, it could be the type of speaking. It is real, it's personal, and we feel it viscerally. Standing up in front of somebody, like my son will do it when he's walking down from his house to Starbucks, because people will turn around. My father, when he moved here from Calcutta with a sure job, had the job till he walked in the door. We had to decide at that point, do we stand up for our ambitions? Do we stand up for our values? I choose to be open. I choose to be present. I choose to own my difference. I choose to do it because it struck me in a moment when I was coming back with my kids from the Gurdwara, the Sikh temple, and we needed milk, and I thought I'd make a quick run to the grocery store. I was like, wearing Indian clothes, maybe I'll go home and change. And it struck me, my son always has his turban on. He can't always hide. We can sometimes change some elements of who we are, but we can't change our truth. From that perspective, you also can't hide from yourself, because when you decide not to be your full self, you're not as successful as you can be. We know that survival is an instinct. We know that assimilation is where we lean, because we're safer when we fit in with the mainstream. We also know social programming is taught. Your worth and my worth is determined by the ether of what is social media these days, not based on what I bring to you or what you bring to me. So let's go back to a scenario where you've got these two groups, or you see something that you know isn't right. Each of us in that moment does a mental calculation. Should I act? Should I step back? Should I look that situation in the eye? Should I find my courage? Should I pretend it didn't happen? And I find that we have different types of reactions based on the programming that we have accepted is okay for us. There is that space of ignorance, which makes it very easy for us to say, it didn't happen. I didn't see it. I don't hurt myself then. Because if I didn't see it, I'm not responsible. You have the other side, well, it wasn't really that big a deal. Okay. You're still safe then, okay? But you're still not taking a position. I personally don't like the term ally. I feel being an ally doesn't put you in the fight. It allows you to stand on the side and say, I want to support you. I want to act. I want to do something. I want to step in. And I want to take a stand. Taking a position is like being part of a choir. Yes, we all believe equity is the right way to go. Taking a stand is getting right up in the face of injustice and owning your stand. There are risks to you. There's risks if you speak from your organizational identity. There are risks if you speak up or don't speak up in your community. What do you reveal about yourself? What do you show? Will you show that you're that Indian woman going in that Indian outfit to get that carton of milk? Can you stand for all of who you are? Every action, every inaction has a consequence. Whether you own it or you don't, life brings you back to that full circle where you will confront it again. You have to make choices. This is not a judgment. It's the direction you choose for yourself, especially if you stand with responsibility. So we understand that vulnerability is real. We understand that fear is real. We understand that some authorities are bigger than us. We understand that there is a risk to us when we take a stand. And sometimes when I step up, I think I'm making things up. I think that I am just going to keep going till I figure this out. I feel alone. Most people understand where I'm coming from. But when you step up, when you take that first step in what seems like an homogeneous painting, you're going to disrupt. So when you take that stand, take on that positive disruption, do it willfully, intentionally. Do it from the perspective of consciousness. Do it strategically. So how do you build power? Power, just like courage, is built. You build constituency. A professor, when I was in college, and I told him I had to do this, I had to work and fight for equity, he said, you and who? How do you know what you're saying will make sense? How do you know that there'll be enough people who will believe in it? Because, yes, one person can create a spark, but can one person alone help build a movement? So the idea of having will, but also doing it with other people who support that truth is important. The other aspect that's really critical is building a collective. To have the kind of influence you want to have people working together. You want to have structure. You don't want to walk into the jungle unprepared. You want to have a strategy. And you've got to do it from that perspective of clout. You've got to bring the power to match the power you're going to add. Ultimately, you have to take personal responsibility. When you take personal responsibility and you're willing to be accountable, the bottom line for me is what you believe in, what your values are, have to be stronger than your fears. It doesn't matter what the it is. Your values, what you believe in, have to be stronger than your fears. I've often thought we get lost by who said what. But we always know what's right, and we always know what's wrong. We feel it. It's not even a situation that you have to think about. Believe in that. Believe in your gut. Believe in your values. And know every position is visible. The one way that I have thought of how we could bring additional equity in our sector is through the Coalition for Racial and Ethnic Equity in Development. It was an idea. It was not something that is new. We've all been working towards it for years. It's a journey that we're trying to create as a movement. We're about 86 signatories who have come together to sign a pledge to build racial and ethnic equity, to create a racial and ethnic equity policy, which is very different from a DEI policy. A racial and ethnic equity policy allows you to think specifically in terms of indicators against race and ethnicity. Now, the journey of creating CREED was bringing a group of people together, supporters and believers, who were willing to stand for this issue. The idea was, if we could talk about it, and if we could be right and wrong with each other, if we could explore safely, we could at least figure out what our positions were. The idea then was to create reputational safety. In other words, peer pressure, positive peer pressure in this regard with this collective, and then organize and create this structure. The practice, it's not just the thinking in a movement, it's the action and it's the governance. So there is a pledge, there's a learning community so we can hear each other, because one of us have the answer. Together we might be able to figure out something that allows us to understand the other and ourselves better. Ultimately, what I want to say is this is personal. Not just because of my son and my daughter and my family and who I am. It's personal because we've stepped into the arena. We've taken a position by being in development, by working in an organization, by walking on the street. It's happening to us. We can choose how we want to act. We can build our own constituency, we can build our own collective, and we can certainly build our own power. But we have to make it personal. Thank you.